Hello and welcome to this video presented by Advanced Data Business Systems. ADBS has been developing enterprise software since 1981 for small to large organizations. This is the Advanced Development Shell Series, and I am Thomas Wade Gonder. This is video 3418. In this developer explanation video, we'll cover how to control the scroll bar in a single form. This comes in handy when the developer wishes to show a section of controls or to scroll up and down. In standard access, when one tabs into a field, access gives focus to that entry control. Controls below it are generally not displayed. Tabbing to the next control progressively shows more of the form. However, we may want to display a section of controls to a user. In this video, we'll explore how to do that in the ADS. This video doesn't have any prerequisite videos. In this video, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself in two ways, and for the reason of explaining a feature for the immediate need of a potential developer. First, version 1.24 is still in development, so it hasn't been released, and this video may have an appearance in some ways different from the current evaluation.accde file and from what the final version 1.24 might look like. Second, I have yet to complete the address form in version 1.24, so it too may appear different in the released evaluation database and future versions. I'll first start with a brief explanation of the current address form, since I'll be using it to demonstrate the idea of form sections. There are two types of what we call addresses. The most obvious is what we are accustomed to using when we mail a letter to someone. It's what the Postal Service needs to make a delivery. There are locations also in this form and table. Locations are a physical place, but don't necessarily have a postal address to which mail can be delivered. Let's look at my old university crash pad in Reseda, California. There are two address records for the building. One shows as a location, and as such there may be an address, but no postal service is associated with it. Also, we won't find a postal code or zip code in the USA, or address elements. We may have data pertaining to its location and what it looks like if we're trying to identify the building in a crowded block. I'll show the whole form in a moment. Now for the address of my old apartment. It's a postal type, where I would get my mail, and with all the typical postal data. It is associated with the location. The form has been broken into sections. Nothing special as far as an access form goes, just a rectangle around certain form controls. Each subsection has a title that gives a hint as to what the section is about. I'm going to open the address form, show the whole form, and tab through the controls of the form, and explain what we're seeing. First, I'm going to open the address form from the menus and show very briefly the full form in action. So I type in here in menu control 4132 and tab. And there's our address form. I'm going to minimize the menus and drag this over a little bit. Since there isn't a prerequisite video yet for the address form, I feel the need to explain just a tad what it is. I hate watching training videos and the presenter is bouncing between fields in the form they know so well, but in 10 seconds I'm hopelessly lost. So scrolling down, we can see the different sections and a few more that we didn't see previously. And what I'm going to do is search for that crash pad I had in university. So its address began with 77 search. And I have a postal and a location. Let's look at the location first. View, scroll down in it. Going back up, we can see that it doesn't have a postal service. It's a location, that's why. It does have an address, but mail wouldn't go there, so we don't have a postal code or element section for the address. But we do have its latitude, longitude, and two mapping softwares. This is Google, and more precisely, this is what 3 words. It'll get you within 3 square meters of the front door of the building. We have this here because visitors to my old apartment would need to go to the front gate first and intercom in. Let's now search for the actual postal address that I had for that apartment. And here's the postal. So we go view. This one is for a specific apartment, 22. It's a postal address that's tied to the United States Postal Service. It's a home business. It has a higher level address, which was that location. It has a zip +4 code. Elements for the address. This is the address from above, and this is the elements put back together again. These two should match. And then we get down to the location. We wouldn't put in a photo because we wouldn't want 100-something photos of just a front door to an apartment with a number on it. All right, now let's take a quick look at what happens when we tab through the form. I'm going to go ahead and edit this form, because what that does is make it a lot easier to see where we are without looking for that little thin cursor line that's almost impossible to see sometimes. So I'm going to hit tab 13 times. And here we stop at this use street line. When I hit tab, we go to the postal code section and the first entry control. But you can see, to see the whole section, we would have to go and manually scroll down. Same thing happens if we hit tab a couple more times and get into the element section. We aren't seeing the whole element section that we'd like to see. Hitting tab a few more times, we get into the latitude, but we don't see that section. So that's the problem we're trying to overcome. To overcome it, what I'm going to do is go into my front end control table for this particular form, into its options, scroll out, and enable scroll bars. So I change that to a true setting, save it, close it, and restart it. Now that we've seen how standard tabs work in Access, and we've enabled scroll bar for the form, let's see what that looks like. Let's open up the menus, run the form again, minimize the menus, drag us back over, search for that address, go to the postal one, view. I'm going to enable the edit, and let's just click in this box here, tab, tab, and we can see that the form is scrolled up to the postal code section. Hit tab, tab, tab again. Now we're in the element section. I'll quickly go down here, tab, we're in the location section, tab, 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 and we're back up to the top of the form in the date not active. If we hit shift tab, we're back down to the location section, shift tab, we're in the element section, shift tab, postal section, shift tab, and back to the top of the form. So it works going forwards and backwards in the tabs. And if you watch, you could see the scroll bar was moving down. How is it doing that? I close down this form, go into design view for the form, go to that first field that we tabbed into that caused it to go to the postal code section, click on that control, go to events, go to Got Focus, look for the cursor. We're in the subroutine for the postal code format ID, Got Focus. Look down here to this line, and we can see a call to SB move with a form. We're moving to a position 300, and this is happening if we've enabled the scroll bars for the form. Let's take a quick look at that subroutine. Control C, go to the top of the form, search for it, find next, move this out of the way, and there's one for the top of the form. Find next, there's one that goes to that position. Find next, here's one for that position again. and another one for that position, and another one for that position. We have several because we're going forward and backwards, plus we also have to take into account that certain entry controls might be disabled for locations versus postal. Find again. There's another position and another position, and then down at the bottom of the form. I have some comments in here. These are left over from my testing. These are routines that I found out on the internet that didn't seem to work in this particular case. They're very old. I'm not sure they work with the more modern access, and they didn't seem to return any values that were of any help. We'll see about that in a minute when we're trying to figure out what position we want to go to. Find next. There's another one that moves down to the bottom, and then we're back to the top, where we'll go to the top, and that's the end of the searches. This subroutine call here is to this subroutine, which is found in our form helper procedures. I have a form helper module. There's a lot of procedures in there. This is just one of them. And here is a complete description of what this procedure does. Looking at the design view of the form, we can see that when it scrolled down, it was just a hair above this street 4. That's about 8 centimeters. And we told it to go down 300. So 300 divided by 8 is about 37 units per centimeter. Now Microsoft, when they did Access, as best as I can tell from what I've read, decided not to use the normal TWIPs for scroll bars that Windows uses in the API. They invented their own units for scroll bars in Access forms. So what we need to do is figure out how many centimeters down we want to go if we're positioning, multiply that by 37, test that, and then adjust that to exactly where we want the scroll bars to position. Let's do one final test here, what I'll call the acid test. Let's go ahead and get the form running again, tab, and let's resize it. So what I'm going to do is resize it down. Let's go into searching for our record for 7.7. Go to the postal view. We've resized the form. I'm actually going to drag it all the way down, and let's see if our routine will work even though the form has been resized. So let's go into edit mode, go here, tab, tab, tab. It does seem to scroll up and to the position we want. Tab, tab, tab. Scrolls up to the position we want. So everything looks good as far as the acid test goes. With that test, I terminate this video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your interest in the Advanced Development Shell developed by ADBS for Microsoft Access.